Final Fantasy XI recently celebrated its 19th anniversary, which alone is incredible, but means we're approaching the long-awaited 20th anniversary, which is something's happening. Square Enix has been talking about this for, I guess, like 2 years now. They finally got approval and funding to have a full 3-year project leading up to the 20th anniversary of Final Fantasy XI. We still don't know what it is. We know that part of it, the Voracious Resurgence storyline, has been, rolling out over time. I still got to catch up on that. I'm a little bit behind. Otherwise, mostly business as usual. A little bit more attention given to Final Fantasy XI from Square Enix in terms of the public space. A lot of articles, people are returning with renewed interest, but for the most part, we still don't know what's coming. Well, to add to that, or maybe reveal some of those mysteries, Square Enix just released the We Are Vana'diel campaign, a website leading up to the 20th anniversary that kind of showcases the history of Final Fantasy XI and other aspects. So I want to go over this. I want to check out the website. It came out, I think, last week. It was revealed, and a lot of people were asking, hey, Hunt for Games, Hunter, what are your thoughts on this? And I guess I must have been in a bad mood or something. I looked at the website, I was like, this sucks. This is stupid. I don't know why they're doing this. I re-looked at it again yesterday. I was like, I don't know why I wasn't hyped for this. This is really cool. So let's go through it and kind of briefly overview. I might kind of revisit this as they introduce new stuff. We'll get to that in a second, but it's not fully fleshed out. They plan to keep introducing new things week in, month out. Anyways, let's get to it. So yeah, to celebrate the Final Fantasy XI 19th anniversary, we have this We Are Vana'diel Final Fantasy XI website, the newest website for Final Fantasy XI officially by Square Enix, other than the Voracious Resurgence storyline itself. So they've broken it out into various content updates. They had the initial update presenting We Are Vana'diel. We'll go over that in a second. The We Remember Vana'diel section, which we could spend days in here. It's just a timeline that they've put together of Vana'diel events in-game, Adventurer's history, which I think is a little bit looser, and then behind-the-scenes commentary from the developers themselves and Square Enix. So it's awesome. We'll check that out. Like I said, we could spend a ton of time in there alone. And then the We Illustrate Vana'diel, where they're revealing various artwork that they've had for the game over the years. Some of which they claim has never been seen before, and they're showcasing it all here. If nothing else, this is an incredible collection of material in a single space that is freely accessible for everybody. It's awesome to see. Anyways, but let's check out the presenting We Are Vana'diel. This came out last week, explaining kind of what's going on here. So, greetings, adventurers. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I'll read through the little headline. Final Fantasy XI producer Matsui here. On May 16th, 2021, we celebrated the 19th anniversary of Final Fantasy XI. I would like to extend my gratitude to all of our adventurers to whom we owe the love and encouragement which have kept us going all these years. Having reached the 19th anniversary, the highly anticipated 20th anniversary draws near. This website is one element we prepare to commemorate this milestone with all of you. It will serve as a countdown website until the 20th anniversary and henceforth serve as the center of celebration as we continue to reveal more information. As you may expect, various memories have amassed over the course of nearly 20 years of Final Fantasy XI. We wanted to create a continually enjoyable website with engaging features in which adventurers partake. Our goal is to retell the history of those who have adventured with us over the last 20 years to serve as a beacon of inspiration for new and returning adventurers to set forth on journeys of their own. With this goal in mind, we needed a theme, a simple phrase in English which would be globally understood and encompass all things Final Fantasy XI. For this, we enlisted the help of Michael Christopher Koji Fox, whom longtime adventurers may recognize from the early days of Final Fantasy XI's localization. This was how our slogan, We Are Vana'diel, was born. We refers to those who have contributed to Final Fantasy XI up to its 20th anniversary and further beyond, the development and operations team, and you, our adventurers. Now, then he goes into the three major components of the website that we just discussed, the We Remember Vana'diel, a chronological timeline of Final Fantasy XI, spanning from the beta test era until the present day, with some behind-the-scenes commentary, and as he presents, gradually updating that timeline with additional details. It's really cool that they're doing that. I know there's a lot of fan versions of that, and the Final Fantasy XI wiki has been over the years accumulating that knowledge, but it's cool to see that from the perspective of Square Enix and the development cycles as well. Second component, we discuss Vana'diel, where I will be speaking with special guests, each of whom I believe will pique the interest of our adventurers. I would like to cover some fascinating topics, so please look forward to it. Oh my gosh, the Final Fantasy XIV fans, please look forward to it. Is triggering. Finally, the third component is we illustrate Vana'diel, like we were going over a second ago. Collection of official artwork and illustrations, some of which have never before been displayed, some rare pieces, which is really cool. In addition to these three major components, we will be updating the website periodically with other content that may pique your interest, so you may want to come have a look from time to time. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's Voracious Resurgence content, just elements kind of teasing what's to come with the 20th anniversary. So yeah, I've been trying to keep my expectations low because of how hyped I got for Voracious Resurgence initially, and what was actually delivered was actually really cool, but it's not necessarily what I expected, so there's obviously going to be a little bit of a letdown there. And I don't want that I want to be excited about new Final Fantasy XI content and releases. So I'm trying to keep my expectations level and not shoot for the moon here. But it's incredible that we're getting this much attention in 2021 to Final Fantasy XI. But they're clearly continuing to build up to this 20th anniversary through in-game content and out-of-game content, really pushing for something that I'm trying to keep my expectations focused here, but this is pretty cool. All right, the development and operations team will be putting their utmost effort into spreading the festivities around this website and in-game as we approach the 20th anniversary. To those who have adventured with us in the past, we hope you enjoy the website and perhaps consider adventuring with us once more, as various in-game activities can still be enjoyed solo or with small groups. To those of you who are actively adventuring with us, we would love to hear your stories from over the years and also hope you will join us in adding more to this website. Thank you for your continued support and encouragement of Final Fantasy XI. I wish you all an exciting and enjoyable time as we all look forward to the 20th anniversary. Akihiko Matsui. Incredible. So, that was the initial hello. Welcome to the We Are Vana'diel website. On the same day, they released their first We Discuss Vana'diel, which was an interview with Hiromichi Tanaka, which I actually have not read. I sort of started skimming through this, and I was like, this is so cool. I don't know why I didn't dive into this immediately. Like I said, I think I must have just been in a terrible mood last week, guys. I don't know why you let me do this. This goes into the story, and I'll let you all read it at your own pace because it is really cool, but it's also kind of long. I always knew that Final Fantasy XI was Square Enix's reaction to other successful MMOs in the space like EverQuest and Ultima Online, specifically EverQuest. What I didn't know was that was in large part due to a lot of the developers playing Ultima Online and EverQuest and getting super addicted. But it's amazing to hear about how all these developers that, I look to with such reverence for creating the game that I love so much, hopping into EverQuest and being just as enamored with that experience as I am with Final Fantasy XI. It's just kind of cool to think about. I never really had that experience with EverQuest because when I hopped in, I was confused and I was a little too young and I just didn't quite get it. And Final Fantasy XI hit me at the perfect time with the right environment, the right people around me kind of urging me to play. But yeah, this part made me laugh so much. Tanaka's going into detail. Mr. Sakaguchi had joined an ambitious guild at the time. It was quickly going through all sorts of adventures, so his level was much higher. But sometimes he'd be like, here are some hand-me-downs, and give us his leftover items. And the rest of us would be wearing newbie gear, while Mr. Sakaguchi would be sporting some impressive golden armor. It's amazing to think of Tanaka running around in EverQuest with hand-me-downs. That's just such a fantastic story. And the timeline of when it was happening, Tanaka, our team had just finished the development of Chrono Cross and was the first to begin, followed by members of the Parasite Eve 2 and Brave Fencer Musashi teams in Osaka who joined us in Tokyo. The teams that came together to form the foundation of Final Fantasy XI. I've never played Parasite Eve or Parasite Eve 2, but I've always wanted to. But Chrono Cross and Brave Fencer Musashi, I love those games. This is amazing. I knew obviously that the Final Fantasy Square was a much smaller company then, so everybody worked on a little bit of everything from what I've kind of gathered. Yes, there were project focused on specific games, but Final Fantasy XI drew a lot of talent from a lot of spaces. So I'm not surprised to hear that, but I never really thought about it. I sort of pictured Final Fantasy IX Final Fantasy X, and a lot of those team members moved on to Final Fantasy XI, which I don't think is really how it went. Which he kind of goes into in the section right before that, saying that we knew MMORPGs were an enormous endeavor and couldn't be undertaken with the size of the previous teams that worked on the Final Fantasy and Mana series. So establishing the Final Fantasy XI project began with bringing together 4 or 5 teams, which is maybe where I got that conception that like everybody worked on sort of everything. Maybe that was just Final Fantasy XI, and all the other games have been very specific teams that were kind of focused. And this piece where he goes into detail about how he kind of just was working on the project as an MMORPG. The fact that it was a Final Fantasy MMORPG was kind of secondary to him, as well as like the naming of it and whether or not it was going to be a numbered title. Originally, he just thought of it as kind of Final Fantasy Online, and they almost named it that. But Mr. Sakaguchi actually was one of the players in that conversation who really thought that it should be a numbered entry in the series. I can't imagine how different the Final Fantasy anthology would be if Final Fantasy XI was Final Fantasy Online instead of Final Fantasy XI. I don't think it would have changed the game as we know it that much, but it would change how people see it a lot. I guess not that much. People already kind of see it as just like that MMO that everybody skips if you're not a huge fan of MMORPGs like I am. But yeah, I mean, this confirms a lot of what I'd heard over the years. That like a lot of the development process was looking at EverQuest, the developers' experience playing EverQuest, Ultima Online, competitors in the space, but not even just the games themselves, but the developers' experience playing those games and turning that into and saying like, how can we take this formula and make it better? But this question is hysterical from Matsui. So you led the team of several hundred members to embark on the MMORPG genre, but how did you go about organizing the team? Tanaka, we began with having them play MMORPGs thoroughly, just as we had played EverQuest together with Mr. Sakaguchi. I imagine you had them play EverQuest then? Yes, we told them that playing the game would be their job for a few months. This is such a brilliant insight into truly how much planning and thought went into Final Fantasy XI in its core design, that most of the members of the team spent months just playing EverQuest to understand what made that game so successful, so popular, and so fun, and how they could take those elements and make it something different and new in Final Fantasy XI. I feel like that's such a concept that has kind of gone by the wayside with the modern way of how games are developed. I feel like a lot of developers are very separate, and this is coming from somebody who's not in the industry, but people pushing the decisions on high for how a lot of the elements, especially monetization elements, come down the pipe, probably don't play their games. So they would never understand the frustrations that different elements kind of can introduce. Part of that is what made Final Fantasy XI so long-lasting, so amazing, and so cohesive, was that everybody making it liked video games, liked MMOs. Well, in theory, if they didn't, they were still forced to play them and figure out what they liked and didn't like about those systems and introduce that into their new game. I think it's important for people that are passionate about something to understand the competition and understand what they're making at a core level. And I don't know if newer games are always good about doing that. I actually think Final Fantasy XIV does a pretty good job with that. Matsui B is heavily involved in gameplay of Final Fantasy XIV. I don't know how much. I'm sure his direction comes very high level down, filtering through the teams, but he's very involved with the game. He plays it constantly. He's very invested and wants to make sure that it's a good game, and it's good for leadership at that level to understand the product that they're producing. But yeah, so definitely read through that. It's really cool. I know I kind of hopped around. I was just trying to kind of explain why I was so excited. I'm going to leave the next one, the July 14 one, probably for a different day. But I have to share this one tidbit that I was skimming over and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. The original release of Final Fantasy XI 1.0, from essentially when they really put pencil to paper till it was essentially done, was about 1.5 years, according to this interview. One of the biggest foundational games of my life that I've been playing for 19 years with such passion took about 1.5 years to make. Now, that's foundationally the game. The zones, the storylines, the fights, the notorious monster plays, all of that, I think continued based on what I've been reading, and the game continued to expand beyond that, obviously. But the core systems of how it behaved, they were so streamlined with what they wanted to create. They were so confident in that because of their experience with other games in the industry, like Ultima Online, like EverQuest, and because everybody on the team had played those, they were laser focused on what they wanted to make, and they made it in a year and a half. And then from there on, they just continue to expand. And I think that's part of what made, you can see in those games that take 10 years to make, where the concepts of how it works keep changing and evolving over time. Like, I get that development is difficult, but when you have that kind of focus and you know exactly what you want to make and you just make it, this is what's possible. It's incredible. You don't see game development like that much anymore in these days and age. Incredible. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're excited to see more stuff like this coming from Square Enix about Final Fantasy XI. Let me know your thoughts. Is this cool? Is this a waste of resources that they could be putting to better things? Have you found things that I totally missed? I still have to dig through this. We remember Vana'diel. It's so deep. Otherwise, guys, definitely join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays for streams on Twitch. We stream every Tuesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not always Final Fantasy XI, but a lot of the times it is. So definitely come by, check it out. Otherwise, we'll see you guys soon. Have a good one. Peace. E7, or G7, so just a couple more. I'm coming. Oh. Alright, so E. Is it inside the building? Should I check inside? Is it upstairs? It's impossible to know. I'm at E6.